If the president is inviting foreign interference, why is that not grounds to move towards impeachment?
What we want to do is have a methodical approach to the path that we are on, and this will be included in that. But not any one issue is going to trigger, oh, now we'll go do this. It's about investigating, it's about litigating, it's about getting the truth, to hold everyone accountable, and no one is above the law.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York is here for her first Sunday show interview since taking office. Congresswoman, welcome to This Week. Thank you for joining us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So what's your sense? You watched that whole interview play out. Does this change the calculus on impeachment?
Well, I think every day that passes, the pressure to impeach grows, and I think that it's justifiable. I think the evidence continues to come in, and I believe that with the president now saying that he is willing to break the law to win re-election, that transcends partisanship, it transcends party lines, and this is now about the rule of law in the United States of America.
There's a new poll out this morning, NBC News, that shows significant growth in Democratic support for impeachment, and the survey was done before George's interview. Pelosi, though, Speaker Pelosi has really held her line on this. How is that flying with progressives?
Well, you know, I think for me this question should not be about polls. It should not be about elections.
Sure.
I think that impeachment is incredibly serious, and this is about the presence and evidence that the president may have committed a crime, in this case more than one. And so I believe that our decision on impeachment should be based in our constitutional responsibilities and duties and not in elections or polling. That being said, with the increase in polls, I think the American people are now recognizing in a much broader scale the depth and the severity of the misconduct coming out of the White House, and a demand to protect our institutions and protect the rule of law in the United States, and at least opening an inquiry into possible misconduct.
So how real is that progressive frustration that Speaker Pelosi has said, at least so far, and she seems to be really holding the line that she's not ready to do that?
I think it's quite real. I believe that there is a very real animus and desire to make sure that we are holding this president to account.
What have you told her about this?
Well, you know, I think we come together as a caucus and we have these conversations, and those, as the speaker likes to say, they are family conversations. They are ones that are held in confidence. But I do believe that that this is truly, again, and I've said this publicly, I've said it privately, I've said it when we subpoenaed the Attorney General and Secretary Ross today on the census, this week on the census, that this is about the rule of law, and we have to make sure that we are holding this president account is holding all of government to account.
It's interesting, you have 41 freshman Democrats that are in seats that were held by Republicans, and from everything I've seen, virtually all of them, these are your majority makers, all of them oppose moving forward with impeachment.
I would disagree with that assessment. I think that some of these dynamics are changing. I would very much not say all of them are opposed to impeachment. I think many of them are extraordinarily concerned about the misconduct coming out. You have to look at the process. There is opening an impeachment inquiry, and then there's the impeachment vote itself.
Right.
There may be some that are out on the impeachment vote itself, but I think that there is a growing sentiment, even among many of these frontliners, as we call them, swing district Democrats, that think we should at least open an inquiry and look into the abundance of evidence, 10 counts of obstruction of justice, 4 with rock-solid evidence. We have violations of the Emoluments Clause. We need to at least open an inquiry so that we can look at what is going on, and that is what opening an impeachment inquiry means.
Isn't there a risk, and I know I take your point about not wanting to do this for politics, but politics is very real here.
Absolutely.
Even if you open the inquiry, there's a vote, the president is impeached, obviously he would still have to be convicted in the Senate with a supermajority. That's not going to happen.
Right. Right.
So don't you risk handing him a political victory here?
So I think there's a couple of scenarios here. One, there's always the possibility that you open an impeachment inquiry and it does not result in a referral. That we open the inquiry.
Wouldn't that be a victory for
look at everything?
Trump too, though?
I think that this is about us doing our jobs. And if we're talking about what's going to be a victory for Trump and what's not going to be a victory for Trump, then we are politicizing and we are tainting this process, which should be removed from politics. That being said, Lindsey Graham himself set a very low bar for impeachment in 1998 in the late 90s with the impeachment of Bill Clinton. That impeachment did not result in a vote by the Senate. But I think for us, what we need to really realize is, are we doing our job as a member of the House? And the Senate has their entire responsibility. Mitch McConnell has over 100 bills. He hasn't brought election security to his feet. And let's not forget that he's involved in this mess too. His wife, Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, just was revealed by the New York Times for having a whole web of potential conflict of interest. And as it relates to bringing projects to Kentucky as well, I mean, there's a whole other separate set of issues in the Senate, but I think we need to be concerned with our job in the House.
And what about this question of prosecuting Donald Trump after he leaves office, which you're now hearing from more Democrats, including Kamala Harris?
Well, again, this is that's completely out of our scope of responsibilities. I nor any other elected official has control over potential prosecution after the president leaves office.
So is it inappropriate to be calling for it? It's like a Democratic variation of lock her up. You know?
Right. Well, I wouldn't equate it to that extent, but I don't think that is. I just don't see the relevancy in calling for prosecution after he leaves office. We have the ability to actually kind of play out our responsibilities now. We have power now. And to bump it to when we don't have power, I don't think makes a whole lot of sense in terms of speaking about it.
Okay, so let's turn to the 2020 campaign. Are you going to endorse?
I mean, not now. It's possible that I'll endorse later on, perhaps. I do not see myself endorsing anytime soon. We haven't even had our first debates yet. I'm very interested in seeing how things play out. So we'll see. Bernie
Sanders just announced his list of New York endorsements. You obviously weren't on that list because you're not endorsing. Did he ask for your endorsement?
He hasn't. I think we've been focused on, he and I have co-led on capping interest rates on credit cards at 15%. We're focused on working together in our capacities as co-workers, me in the House and him in the Senate. And so he has not asked for my endorsement, but he has asked for my co-sponsorship on several bills, which I am happy to offer.
Would he have an edge? I mean, you volunteered for his campaign. He supported your campaign.
I think what we really need right now is a presidential candidate that is going to fight for the well-being of working-class Americans and all Americans. And I think that he does that excellently. I think his policies do that excellently. I believe Senator Warren's policies do that excellently. And I think that that's really what we need to be looking for in terms of the agenda. And when we talk about the agenda, for me, that agenda means the right to health care. It means a $15 minimum wage pegged to inflation. It means making sure that we can make college accessible to all people, including public colleges, vocational schools, and community colleges. It means having a foreign policy that is focused on peace building and stability. And that is what I am looking for, really, in a candidate for the United States.
So do you believe that Democrats will lose to Donald Trump if they don't nominate somebody who is, in your mind, a true progressive along the lines you just described?
Well, I think that we have a very real risk of losing the presidency to Donald Trump if we do not have a presidential candidate that is fighting for true transformational change in the lives of working people in the United States. I think that if we elect a president on half measures, that the American people don't quite understand the agenda of a president, a president that says we're fighting for higher wages, but we don't want a $15 minimum wage, fighting for education, but we don't want to make colleges tuition free, fighting for women's rights, et cetera, but we don't want to go all the way with that, then I think we have a very real risk of losing the presidency. I
saw that you said recently there are too many candidates, 23, I think, at the latest count, and you've called for, I think you said, eliminations. And one of those you named was John Delaney. You said to sashay his way out, but who else? Who else should step out of this
Well,
race?
I think we'll see. I think Democratic voters will see very soon, in about a week, 2 weeks, our first Democratic debates. I think we'll see
20 of them.
Right, and I do think that the field is too large. I do believe that having a competitive primary is healthy and that it's good, but we have so many Senate seats to take, and the fact that we aren't discussing that more, even if we win the presidency and we don't win the Senate, we are not going to be able to get a robust agenda passed in the way that we envision it.
So Joe Biden appears to be the front runner in virtually all the polls. Do you think he has sufficiently answered the accusations from women who accused him of inappropriate touching? Does he, in short, does he get it?
I think that's something that he has to kind of show the electorate. I think that I think that it is an issue where there is a struggle. I'll be completely honest. I don't think that he has, I wouldn't say that it is an incredibly severe, I don't think that voters think that he is necessarily guilty of sexual misconduct or anything like that. But I do think that there may be some discomfort, especially seeing some clips this week and, the week before, telling a 13-year-old, telling her brothers to watch out for her. And I think there are some things with female voters that it's just not quite locked down. And I think that there's some ways to go, but this is also a cultural evolution, I think, that we're having as a country. So I don't think it's necessarily about being punitive in these ways. But I do think, in all issues and with all demographics and in all electorates, it's not about right and wrong sometimes. It's just about whether feeling like someone gets it or not.
And you get the sense that he has not conveyed that yet?
I don't think he's necessarily convinced all women. But I also don't think that he is, people tend to interpret these situations as completely one way or another. Is he a bad person or is he a good person? I don't think it's about that.
Do you think Democrats, in hindsight, made a mistake by giving Bill Clinton a pass all those years over his treatment of women?
Probably. I think that, but again, I think I actually don't think that this is as partisan. I wouldn't look at this through a partisan lens. I think that this is part of an evolution that we've been having as a country. Women have historically been mistreated. I don't think that is really a controversial thing to say. We still have a pay gap, which is persisted by inequalities in parental leave, inequalities in, the fact that women don't get guaranteed paid leave. I have 3 staffers that are having children in my first 3 months and first 6 months of my term. Wow. And I see how these inequalities pay out. That's why I give all new fathers in my office guaranteed 3 months paid leave, because those inequalities are very real. So I think that when it comes to President Clinton, I think that it's not just Democrats. I think that we have historically, from Anita Hill to the present day, I think that women have historically bared a lot of, difficulty, adversity in the workplace.
Now, Biden has said he has the most progressive record of any of the candidates. I know you don't agree with that. Could you see yourself supporting Joe Biden?
I mean, if he wins the nomination, I think that it is absolutely important that we defeat Donald Trump.
And will progressives rally around Joe Biden?
Well, I think when it comes to who we select as a presidential candidate, we have to really factor in the enthusiasm of voters. I think that was an issue that we had in 2016. I think that it wasn't necessarily that Trump inspired a wave of enthusiastic voters. It's that people felt worse about both candidates in 2016 than they have in a very long time. And so I think that we need to pick a candidate that is going to be exciting to vote for, that all people, women, people of all genders, races, income levels, geographies feel excited and good about voting for. And so I think that that's really what we should be looking for.
Do you think Biden has sufficiently answered the question on the Hyde Amendment, which bans federal funds for abortion? He had supported it year after year after year. Now he says he's against it. Is that close the case for that?
Well, I'm encouraged by the fact that he is now against the Hyde Amendment. I think that that's where I think it's a very base level where all candidates need to be. I'm excited to be introducing a repeal of the Hyde Amendment via amendment. We'll see where it goes for incarcerated women, and the maternal and reproductive health care of incarcerated women should be guaranteed as it is with all women in the United States. And so I think it really depends, and that's really what the Hyde Amendment is about. The Hyde Amendment isn't about abortion per se. The Hyde Amendment is truly about equality of health care and health care access for low-income women and women of color and women that get caught in our mass incarceration system. And so the Hyde Amendment is about income inequality, and it's about women's health care in a system of income inequality. So I think that we need to repeal it. I think that having a strong record, I think all of this is stuff for voters to decide. But I think that this is not in the niche topic of women's issues anymore. This is an American issue. We're talking about 51% of the American public being impacted by the realities of the Hyde Amendment.
Okay, unfortunately, we're almost out of time. I got a couple of quick ones I want to get to. First, you have suggested that an economic system that has billionaires is immoral. So let me just ask you, if you had a true progressive program put in place, would Jeff Bezos still be a billionaire in 5-10 years from now?
Well, I think for me, I spend less time thinking about Jeff Bezos and I think more time thinking about Amazon warehouse workers. I think about the outcomes that I want for those folks. So whether Jeff Bezos is a billionaire or not is less of my concern than if your average Amazon worker is making a living wage, if they have guaranteed health care, and if they can send their kids to college tuition free. And if that's the case and Jeff Bezos is still a billionaire, that's one thing. But if his being a billionaire is predicated on paying people starvation wages and stripping them of their ability to access health care, and also if his ability to be a billionaire is predicated on the fact that his workers take food stamps, so I'm paying for him to be a billionaire.
And do you think that's why he's a billionaire, because he pays his workers starvation wages? And
I think it's certainly a part of the equation when you have a very large workforce and you underpay every single person, and then you also participate in taking billions of dollars of government subsidies. I think that could be part of it. But if he's willing to give up all of his government subsidies, if we're willing to charge fair taxes, if we're willing to pay people a living wage, send people to college tuition free, guarantee everyone health care, and he's still a billionaire, then that's a fight we can have another day.
Okay, and I know you're working with Ted Cruz on a couple of things. That surprised a lot of people. Have you actually talked to him yet? Have you worked with him in person?
Our teams are in communication. We haven't met in person yet, but I do know that we have an ongoing working relationship, and I'm extraordinarily excited in seeing what we can accomplish.
Extraordinarily excited about working with Ted Cruz.
Never thought I'd say it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. We hope to have you back again soon.
Thank you.
Much more discussion.